Here we're looking at some unit circle trig. First up, I've got to take a look at cosecant. My strategy here is going to be to find sine of negative 90 and then take the reciprocal, in other words, flip it. Okay, so I'm going to find sine of negative 90. First off, I can figure out where that is. Negative 90 is down here. My coordinates are 0 and negative 1. At this point, sine of negative 90 is negative 1. That's the y value here. So cosecant of negative 90 is going to be the reciprocal of negative 1, which is negative 1 over 1, which happens to be the same thing. If you flip negative 1, it stays negative 1. Okay. Number 9, we're looking at cotangent of 120. I'm going to take the tangent of 120 and then take the reciprocal of that answer. So if we're looking at 120, that's about here. That's going to be a 60-degree reference angle. And my coordinates there, negative a half and the square root of 3 over 2. I also know that this is a tall triangle, so I'm going to do the bigger one, square root of 3 over 2, divided by the smaller one, negative a half. So tangent of 120 is root 3 over 2 divided by negative a half, or root 3 over 2 multiplied by negative 2 over 1. My 2's cancel out. I get negative the square root of 3. That means that cotangent of 120 is equal to 1 over negative the square root of 3. The reciprocal of tangent at that value. For number 11, I'm looking at cosine of 11 pi over 6. Okay, I know this is in the 30-degree family because I'm dividing by 6. So in terms of my reference angle, we're looking at a 30, 60, 90 right triangle. And cosine is going to be the adjacent divided by the hypotenuse. So cosine of my third-degree reference angle is going to be root 3 over 2. And then if I take a look at where this is, so we start at 0, there's 6 pi over 6, otherwise known as pi, 9 pi over 6, and 12 would be back at the beginning, so that's 2 pi. So we're somewhere over here. Cosine is positive at this point. So root 3 over 2 is also the value of cosine of 11 pi over 6. Number 13, we're looking at cosecant of negative 180. I'm going to find the sine and then take the reciprocal. All right. Negative 180 is here. My coordinates are negative 1, 0. So in looking at this, my sine of negative 180 is equal to 0. That's the y value here. That means that cosecant of negative 180 is 1 divided by 0, which is undefined. You do not get credit for writing 1 divided by 0. You get credit for getting to the undefined. 15 is going to be tangent of 0. Use the same approach. I'm going to find where this guy is. It happens to be here. We know that tangent is the y divided by the x in terms of coordinates. In other words, 0 divided by 1, which is 0. So tangent of 0 is 0. For number 8, cotangent of 150. I'm going to find the tangent of 150 and take the reciprocal. Okay, so I know that 150 is going to be there with 30 degrees left to get to 180. So this is looking at the negative root 3 over 2, 1/2 point. In other words, the short triangle. So if we're dividing the short side half by negative root 3 over 2, we end up looking at tangent of 150 is 1/2 divided by negative the square root of 3 over 2. or 1/2, multiplied by negative 2 over the square root of 3. So the tangent of 150 is 1 over the negative square root of 3. That means that cotangent of 150 is equal to negative the square root of 3 over 1, or just negative the square root of 3. Sine of 120, that's going to be here with 60 left. So I'm looking at my 60-degree reference angle, and in this quadrant, sine is positive. So we were looking at root 3 over 2, 1/2. Sine is opposite, divide by 1. Sine of 120 is the square root of 3 over 2. Number 12, we're looking at secant of negative 2 pi over 3. I'm going to find cosine of negative 2 pi over 3 and find the reciprocal. Okay, I know this is a 60-degree reference angle because of dividing by 3, so that my cosine value is going to be based on my 30, 60, 90 right triangle. So root 3 over 2, 1/2, and 1. Cosine of the reference angle, pi over 3, is going to be 1/2. Okay, let's figure out if this is positive or negative. So we're looking at negative 2 pi over 3. Well, there's pi over 3. 2 pi over 3 is here. And we know that in this quadrant, only tangent is positive because we're dividing two negatives. Therefore, secant would be negative. So the cosine rather, of negative 2 pi over 3 is negative 1/2. And that means that the secant of negative 2 pi over 3 is equal to negative 2 over 1, or negative 2. Number 13, we already did, so I have a feeling this is supposed to be over here. There we go. All right, secant of 0. In other words, I'm going to find cosine of 0 and then take the reciprocal. Okay, cosine of 0. At this point, we're dealing with 1, 0. Cosine of 0 is 1. Secant of 0, the reciprocal of 1 is also 1. Cosecant of negative 2 pi over 3. I'm going to find sine of negative 2 pi over 3. And from there, I'm going to take the reciprocal. Okay, we've already looked at negative 2 pi over 3. And that's down here with a 60-degree reference angle. So we're looking at negative root 3 over 2, negative 1/2, and 1. So sine of this angle is going to be negative root 3 over 2. And from here, I'm going to find cosecant by taking the reciprocal. So cosecant of negative 2 pi over 3 is negative 2 over the square root of 3. If you'd like to rationalize the denominator for this, that'd be multiplying the top and bottom by the square root of 3. You could also write this as negative 2 square roots of 3 over 3. This is not required, but you might see this on multiple choice versions. Here we're looking at some beyond unit circle trig stuff, so using unit circle stuff and applying it at a deeper level. First up, we've got 2 cosine squared pi over 4 plus 2 sine squared of pi over 4. I'm going to realize that this means 2 cosine pi over 4 times cosine pi over 4. This just means we're squaring that trig value, plus 2 sine pi over 4 times sine pi over 4. And again, this just means we're squaring that trig value. So 2 times cosine pi over 4 is square root of 2 over 2. Cosine pi over 4 is the square root of 2 over 2. Sine of pi over 4 is the square root of 2 over 2. Sine of pi over 4 is the square root of 2 over 2. Okay, I've evaluated the trig stuff. The next thing I have to do is do some multiplication. So if I do this out, okay, we've got a couple 2's canceling out. Square root of 2 times square root of 2 is 2. And a couple 2's canceling out. Square root of 2 times square root of 2 is 2. 2 over 2 is 1, and 1 plus 1 is 2. Our final answer for this is 2. 1 minus tangent squared of 2 pi over 3 minus secant squared of 2 pi over 3. Okay, this one's similar but a little bit more complex. I do have to find my trig values, so I'm going to do that off to the side. So tangent of 2 pi over 3. I know that's second quadrant, so it's going to be negative. And we're looking at the square root of 3 over 2 divided by a half, which is going to come out to the square root of 3. Okay, so tangent of 2 pi over 3 is going to be negative the square root of 3. All right, now I'm going to look at secant of 2 pi over 3. First, I'm going to find cosine of 2 pi over 3, and then I'm going to find the reciprocal. All right, 2 pi over 3 is here, so we're looking at 60, negative a half, root 3 over 2. Cosine is the x, so cosine of 2 pi over 3 is negative a half. Secant of 2 pi over 3 is negative 2, the reciprocal of negative a half. All right, let's go into this part now. So 1 minus, and tangent is going to be negative square root of 3. All right, and then we're doing minus secant is going to be negative 2. Cool. Negative square root of 3 times negative square root of 3 is positive 3. So it ends up being 1 minus 3. Then I've got the minus there. Negative 2 times negative 2 is going to be positive 4. 1 minus 3 is negative 2. Minus 4 is negative 6. Last up, we've got a kind of trig puzzle. I've got cosine of alpha is negative 7 over 25, and tangent of alpha is less than 0. Okay, first thing I want to do is figure out what quadrant this is supposed to be, and I'm going to use these two pieces of information to figure out that quadrant. So I know that looking at my 4 quadrants, all are positive, and then sine is positive, then tangent is positive, then cosine is positive. Okay, cosine in this case is negative, so that means we're going to cross out my first 2 quadrants. Cool. Tangent is also negative. That means we're going to cross out my 3rd quadrant as well. So in the 2nd quadrant, both cosine and tangent are negative. That's where our angle is. That's going to be used to decide what's going on with these things as far as the quadrants go. Okay, so step 1 was find the quadrant. Step 2 is going to be to draw a right triangle to help me figure this out. You might even think about putting this as in the 2nd quadrant. So we're looking at negative 7 for cosine because cosine is negative over 25. I'm going to Pythagorize 25 squared is equal to negative 7 squared plus y squared. And when I solve this, this is going to come out to be 24. Okay, so we're looking at 7, 24, 25 is our right triangle. Let's take a look at this. So sine is going to be, actually we're using alpha, opposite over hypotenuse. Because we're in the 2nd quadrant, it's going to be positive. Tangent is going to be opposite over adjacent, 24 over negative 7, and that fulfills our tangent is negative. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, so it's going to be 25 over 24. And since sine is positive, cosecant is also positive. And secant is going to be the reciprocal of cosine, 25 over -7. And we are officially done.